Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the second podcast. Ride team, damn it, start over. Hey, everybody, I want to stop it.
Slow down, deep breath.
I know. I'm nervous. We got a big name today.
Oh, come on.
Hey, everybody, I want to welcome you to the second Ride Team podcast. Now, I'm really excited about today's guest. This guy I've known for quite some time. I think the world of him. He's incredible at what he does. He's been in the real estate industry for quite some time. I'm going to let him tell you all about him, but I would like to introduce to you Kevin Robinson, coach, realtor, father, husband, and just an all-around great guy. So, Kevin, welcome.
Christy, my sister, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on here with you.
Oh, of course. In fact, my whole team is excited to have you. They can't wait to hear you talk about what you do, and because they're always impressed, Kevin, when they see you on the Zoom meetings that we get to be on together. And so they told me we have got to get Kevin Robinson on as our next speaker. So I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, you live here in Southern California, but you came from a very cool place.
Yeah, cool in more ways than one. So I started my real estate career. So I was born down here in Southern California, born in Pomona, LA family for a long time. And when I was 8, we moved up to Monterey. My dad was helping my uncle build his house. My uncle had just retired from the service up in Fort Ord, and my dad was going up there every so often and helping him build his house. And then all of a sudden, my dad called on a weekend and said, "Hey, we're moving." And we said, when? I remember when I was 8 years old, and it was like, in a week. And so we moved to Monterey, and that's where I spent the remainder of my formative years. And that's where I got licensed, up in Monterey in 1985.
What? No way.
1985. Yeah, I was just a couple of years out of high school, few years out of high school, and then was working at Wells Fargo Bank. Remember distinctly, one of the district managers was down from San Jose, asked me, "Hey, what do you want to do with your career?" I was 19 at that time. So I was like 1983, 84. And I said, well, I want to be like the guy sitting across at the bank. And the guy at the bank then, back then, bank would open at 10, close at 3. The branch manager, always a guy. All the women ran the branches, right? And I always worked over, I was working as a bank teller. And I said, I want to be like him. He wears a 3-piece suit. Bank opens at 10. He gets there at about 10:05. Bank closes at 3. He leaves about 3:15. And that's not even counting his lunch, where he was going to lunch at about 11:30 and coming back at 1 or 2 after a couple of martinis. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that, make $50,000. And they said, well, you got to go back to college. And then all of a sudden I said, I don't want to make $50,000, and I don't want to do that because I didn't want to go back to school. So I was driving down the street, saw a, we're hiring sign, out on a kind of a billboard at a Century 21 red, white, and blue in the city of Seaside. And he had something in his window, and I pull in, talk to the broker. Broker was kind of an eccentric guy. One of my favorites, though. He gave me a book, tapes back then, and said, "Hey, when you pass your test, come see me." And back then, you didn't have to go to school or anything. I went, I passed my test, and, hey, here we are 30-something years later, and I'm on here with you.
That's crazy. I never would have thought that you got your license when you were just a wee little lad.
Yeah, I had turned 20. I didn't know. Look, I had hair. I had a Jerry curl back then. I weighed 150 pounds or something. And,
soaking wet.
Yeah, soaking wet. And literally soaking wet. I used to get sprayed. I got sprayed with water hose when I used to go knock doors back in the day. And it was, back then you're just so young because people don't know, they didn't know who I was, what I was doing. And I was just a young kid. I couldn't even grow a goatee or anything back then. And that was way back in the day, but it was fun. I worked for a really good broker back then. He had offices, and we had an office in Seaside and one in Carmel. And the only time I would go out to Carmel is when they had nice caravans. We'd go on broker caravans I'd say, I don't want to go see that stuff in Carmel because I wasn't selling there. I was selling more meat and potatoes real estate, $50,000 to $80,000. I wasn't selling Bing Crosby's houses and Clint Eastwood, but I remember way back then, I think there was a broker caravan, Bing Crosby's house out in Pebble Beach. And that's the only time I would go on caravans out there because they had the good food back then. And, you know, back in the day, real estate agents, you give us food and we're showing up. And so that's what I used to do back in the day.
I don't think that's changed.
No, that hasn't changed at all. At all. As an affiliate, a partner with us, agents are always looking for the people that walk in the door with a donut. Like back in the old days when you could do that sort of thing, they always want to, who's got the donuts? And I was that's why so many of us are fat and out of shape.
Well, I honestly don't miss those days.
Right.
It's easier for a rep now to be focused more on your job and your clients than what type of bagels to bring,
Exactly.
So I'm not missing that. So Kevin, tell me, so you started at a really young age and you're talking about at 20 going to broker preview, doing the meat and potatoes transactions, like, what did you say, 60 to 80,000?
It was 50 to 80,000.
Okay. How old were you when you opened your first escrow?
I had just turned 21. I may have been 20. It was somewhere between 20 and 21. I can't remember, but I remember the first sale and I remember my first listing. And so my first sale was $71,000. It's 2-bedroom, one bath, 750 square foot house. And I think I can remember the street off of Broadway and Seaside for anybody that knows. And, a lot of the houses in the area have a clear view of Monterey Bay. And this was, not in Monterey, but one of the outside areas and considered from a real estate standpoint, maybe a step down. But, view of Monterey Bay, $71,000 as a sale, nice young couple. And then my first listing was a $55,000 home on a 25 by 75 lot, 700 square feet. It was a 2-in-1. It's still to this day, probably the cleanest, most immaculate house I've ever sold as far as cleanliness. Oh. And this guy was ahead of his time. He had the pastel colors and the white Berber carpet. I didn't even know what Berber carpet was when he told me that's what he had. And that had a clear shot. It was, on a shotgun lot. And the front of it was like on stilts, and it had a clear shot of Monterey Bay, and that was $55,000.
That's crazy. What would that house go for today?
Today in that particular hood, because that's kind of in the hood, to be quite honest, it's like 400 or 500 now. But further up, where I always wanted to sell where up on the top of the hill, like where my dad helped my uncle build his home, those houses were going. When my uncle bought it, he probably only got it for, put it together, it was, 30, 40,000 in the early 70s. But when I started selling, I remember a house across the street from his was $110,000. And my uncle's was a little bit bigger, so it was up higher. His was probably worth about $150,000. And now those are going for between $900,000 and like $1.1 million, $1.2 million.
Well, so real estate is a great investment, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, positively. It's the best investment in the world, isn't it?
It is, hands down. Okay, yep. So we know your history, when you got into real estate, how you lived up in Monterey. I can't imagine leaving that area, but you have a beautiful family too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yeah. You have your son Ryan.
Yep, my son Ryan. He's 26 years old, lives like a prince.
Yeah,
never leaving, mama's boy, but that's okay.
It's okay.
That's okay. And so I've got him, and then I've got a daughter. So Ryan's 26, and then our daughter Reese is 6.
You mean the diva?
The diva, the little diva. Yes, you know her. You know her well.
The beautiful little diva.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you, and she's something else, and so she keeps me on my toes. She's the main reason now. I always thought that I would, continue to coach, continue to work, do things, but now I really have no choice. I'll be coaching and selling real estate until I can no longer move, just simply because I'm going to have to. She's inexpensive. You called her the little diva, and there's a reason, and she's expensive.
She is adorable.
Yes.
You guys check Kevin Robinson out on Facebook and see how seriously how adorable she is. She's a riot.
Yeah, she's something else. I married well, Christy.
Yes.
You know, with Ivy being my partner in both life and in real estate, and so she's able to keep us together, both business and in the home life.
Right. So saving the queen diva for last, I was going to bring up Miss Ivy, who is a wonderful woman. You guys are you're a great couple. I love you both. So, Kevin, I want to talk to you though now about what you're doing. I know you're still selling real estate.
So now I head up the coaching department. I am the coach at the company at Nationwide Real Estate Executives here out of LA and Orange County. And so Nationwide is an independent company. You know the CEO, Daryl Owen, well, and Daryl's a young guy, and he's built and building one of the fastest growing independent companies here in Southern California, real estate companies here in Southern California. And so when I first came over to the company a couple of years ago, I was the sales manager in the Long Beach office, and we were developing and working on some different things with our coaching program, and the perfect opportunity to transition from sales manager to coach for the entire company. And we have 500 to 650 agents, maybe a few more or less, to transfer once we hit that COVID mark in March. Perfect opportunity for us to transition and begin to build the coaching and training program. And we already had that one pillar with my partner in crime, Ben Gomez, who's been with the company since the inception. And Ben is the director of training and heading the training department. And so this is a perfect opportunity for me to get in and build the coaching department from the ground up.
So, Kevin, why coaching?
Well,
why do realtors need a coach?
Well, everybody, here's the thing, and all coaches will say the same thing, and the reason why a lot of us will say the same thing is because it's true. Tiger Woods needs a coach, Tom Brady needs a coach, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, everybody needs a coach. And for me, I started coaching at the first, something fell, scared me. Sorry. I started coaching probably, the first, I started coaching in athletics when I was young. I was a teenager and coaching baseball teams and things like that. And then when I moved to Orange County, I coached high school football. I always had that coaching gene in me. And so I work with really good coaches that are nationally known. Everybody who's in the real estate industry would know who they are. And it's just always intrigued me. I always want to come from contribution. I always have. Yeah. And it just sort of, I just evolved through my real estate career and doing things, I guess maybe because of the personality or because I really do like to come from contribution. I've just always helped other people. And so it's just a way for me to continue in this business and grow in this business and really not want to burn out. Yeah. It keeps me sane. And so I can focus a little bit on helping others build their business outside of just, helping, obviously, Ivy and I build ours. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I've known you for a long time. You and I met, I think, back when you were at Prudential as an office manager. Yep. And you were incredible. The agents responded to you. They followed your lead. And, and you were tough. And you would even be very bluntly honest with them and in terms of, well, if what you're doing ain't working, stop doing that. Right. You just you would just like hammer them with that message, like change what you're doing. Right. As I suggest, right?
Right. And the thing is, I'm one of those that doesn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And so the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And like you said, if agents are doing things or more importantly, if agents are not doing things, because usually that's what it is. Right. They're not doing things. Right. Because doing something, even a blind squirrel is going to get a nut every once in a while. But if you're not doing anything, that's where we need to change it. And so, yes, my motivation methods maybe you could tell I was a football coach. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, my whole thing, and you and I have had this discussion before, I'm not, and no coach is for everybody. I'm not trying to be for everybody in our company. You'd love to, and you'd love to be able to please everybody and everything. But my job isn't to please everyone. My job is to work to get the most out of the agents that I possibly can, to help them with their skills, to motivate, to hold them accountable.
Right.
That's my job. And
Right.
at the end of the day, if in December, well, in January, when they get their 1099s, the last day of the month, my goal is to make sure that 1099 is as good or better than what they set out to do. And if I do that, then I'm okay.
Well, I can tell our audience that I have heard and witnessed firsthand many agents while on our Zooms with your offices.
Yep.
Just give you praise for what you've done for them in their business, which is why we thought it was important to get you on our next podcast so that you could share how important it is, especially with all the realtors that are listening, how important it is to have a coach if they're not where they want to be in their business. Now, a lot of agents are going to hope that they can sign up under you, but
Right.
you cannot, right? You're not
Right.
a free agent, if you will, in terms of coaching.
Correct. Here's the thing, though. I still mentor and work with agents outside of the company, truth be told. And, because I have agents that will call me that I don't even remember from 15 or 16 years ago. And then after we have that conversation, I say, oh, yeah, you asked me that question 16 years ago, and you still didn't learn. And so, so I still continue to, and a lot of agents at Prudential, which is now Berkshire Hathaway,
Mm-hmm.
that I still communicate with. And so, I've been fortunate enough to work with some really good managers, brokers, and coaches. And if you ain't giving it away for free at times, then you're not doing what you're saying when I say come from contribution.
Yes.
And so, though you got to value, a lot of times people don't value what's free, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, I have to be willing to give, and then one way or another, I am going to receive. And I'm either going to receive, and I'm not talking from a monetary or financial sense, but just from the satisfaction of helping somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
Hey, every coach in America knows that if I wanted to make more money, if it were only about the money, then I wouldn't coach, I wouldn't manage, I would never have had my own company. I wouldn't do that. Well, in fact, I've had coaches that have told me I'm crazy for doing that, and still to this day tell me that same thing.
Well, you know what? I would have to say I disagree with them, because you are really making a difference with the agents that you are coaching, and it's awesome to hear all the testimonies that you get when you're on a Zoom. So keep doing what you're doing, my friend. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes,
those things come back to you for what you put out, comes back to you tenfold. So now is an opportunity for you to give. And I'm gonna ask you, what is, Kevin, the one thing in this environment that we're in with COVID, and here, we're on another surge, numbers are skyrocketing, but real estate is booming. What is the one thing that you think, or that you believe, that agents should be doing today, right now, in this environment to grow their business?
Well, here's the thing. So what we did was, back in March, you remember when we first hit COVID, March and April, people were scared and they were nervous. And then all of a sudden, once we hit mid-May, June, July, everything, the market just started booming. But what we did was, right from then, I was looking at the dates the other day, and it was somewhere around March 16th, 17th, 18th, something like that, where we immediately started utilizing Zoom. And I came from a team environment that we were using Zoom. We were using, freeconferencecall.com and all that stuff, and Google Meetup or whatever that is. But we were using Zoom a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. And so it was a perfect opportunity for us. As soon as we said, okay, we're going to just start going virtual, it was easy for me. We did it immediately, and as a company, we transitioned really, really fast.
That's, it's crazy because you're the first person I've ever heard say that, because learning the Zoom, that's a whole new world, right? It was very difficult for a lot of people.
At my previous company and the team that I was working with as the regional director, we had switched to Zoom like a few months before I switched companies. We had switched to the Zoom platform. And so even back then it was cool, and it was so much easier to use. The video and everything was better. So the transition, like I said, was really simple. And so then getting to the point and getting the agents to be comfortable with having virtual conversations, virtual presentations with their buyers and sellers, it was an easy sell for me because I believed in it. So what should agents be doing now? What we have to do is we have to educate. You see, we get our news on a national level a lot of times. And so people think, and it took a while for us to get the word out there. Hey, the market is great. The market is crazy. And like I said, when you say the market is crazy, that could be good or that could be bad. But it's our opportunity as agents. What's the one thing we should be doing? We should be talking to as many people as we can and letting them know that it is still safe to go out into the water. In fact, to let them know that the time to go for a dip is now. Yeah. Whether you are a buyer or a seller, because with the interest rates being where they are, and you can't lose in Southern California real estate over time if you don't do anything crazy. And so from a seller standpoint, hey, we're at those crazy 2005, 2006, 2007 peak price times. Mm-hmm. So the time to cash out and maybe reinvest is now. And for buyers, one of our lender partners, he said he had 30-year fixed 2.25 the other day. My gosh, how long, Christy, have we been saying? Well, after the recession and interest rates went down, we were saying, hey, interest rates are at an all-time low. They can't stay this low forever. Well, it seems like they've stayed this low forever.
Forever. Yeah, exactly.
And so the thing for us to do as an industry is to get out there and talk to as many people, go belly to belly old school, utilize the technology that we have, because we've got great technology, but it's still all about when you can. And so when I say belly to belly, it's not just texting and emailing and social media. It's having this type of conversation. Yep. It's getting on the phone. Yeah, we can't go and sit down and meet people like we did 9 months ago, 10 months ago, 11 months ago. But we can still have this type of conversation and talking to people on a regular basis as much as you possibly can and letting them know that it's safe to go out there and do your thing in real estate. That's what we should be doing.
I want to ask you something, because you talk about belly to belly, ear to ear, right? Mm-hmm. Ear to ear is so important, but it's become a lost art in a certain age group. So a lot of young people don't like to talk on the phone. Right. They want to text. They want to be behind the scenes. They don't want to have an ear-to-ear conversation. Right. Do you find that with your clientele, with your younger real estate agents?
Yes, for sure. And the thing that you have to let them know, that's okay. However, you have to have that at some point, you have to have that conversation. And then when you work out, hey, what's the best way for you and I, Christy, to communicate? Yes. Hey, should I text you? If I need something, if I've got a property that, hey, we need to go see tonight, is it best to call you, text you, email you? What's the best way? But one thing that I'm never going to do, if I have something important to say, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm never going to negotiate over the phone. I'm never going to talk about requests for repairs, or excuse me, when I say over the phone, via text or email.
Via text, yes.
I'm going to have that conversation because, heck, when you and I are talking, sometimes things can get lost in the translation. Right. But when you text or email, the tonality of what you're trying to convey, it doesn't come out in text. Right. You know, emojis only go so far, right? And so we have to have that conversation. And so, yes, with the less experienced and younger generation, it is difficult at times. They always say, hey, did you communicate this to your client, or did you talk to your client? Oh, yeah, I talked to him and they messaged me. And I said, no. I said, did you talk to your client?
Yeah.
And then the answer is usually different. And it's hard to get them to pick up the phone and call people.
I know this to be true because I have this same situation with my staff, because my staff are all younger.
Right.
Yes, Alec?
Well, so I also have a question. Hi, sorry.
Okay,
I had some phlegm in my throat.
See, he was like, okay, I don't want you guys bashing my generation.
Well, yeah, well, 'cause I would also say that it goes both ways, because if you're dealing with a buyer or a seller that is in my generation or even younger, I feel like that can help, because in a lot of ways we would prefer also being texted than called from an agent. So yeah, I think there is utility. I think recognizing your clientele and what their preferred method of communication is good. But I just wanted to throw out there that there are younger people that do prefer that on the other side of the side of the transaction.
And you're 100% correct, and that's why I said you have to have that communication with them and then find out what their preferred method is.
Yep.
At the same time, Alec, and you'll find this with me, tail doesn't wag dog. I am the lead dog in this. My clients depend on me for information. And so I tell them, hey, we need to have a conversation. When's the best time for us to talk? Not when's the best time for us to text. When's the best time? Oh, I can't talk until 5 o'clock today. Okay, great. Then I'm available between 5 and 5:30. Let's have a conversation. And so, yes, there are times where texting is going to be it. But there are other times where you have to make it clear that we need to talk.
Yep.
And then you can figure it out. Yes, there has to be some versatility in how we communicate with people, because there's so many different ways to communicate.
Right.
At the same time, at the beginning, I like for my people to have that conversation.
Right.
For sure.
It actually helps to bond the relationship too, having dialogue versus just, text or email.
Now, here's the thing though. Now, as you know, because Christy, you and I, we can text like champs back and forth. But when it's time to have a conversation, it's time to have a conversation. And I'll be the first to tell my clients being my agents, hey, when you can't get a hold of me, you need to shoot me a text and let me know what our conversation needs to be like. So when I do call you, I know how to handle the situation. Or, so when I get on the phone, it can be a 5-minute conversation and not a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Because time is definitely money. But both of you, Alec brings up a good point. That's where that versatility. See, Christy, people in our generation, this is what the COVID times have done for us. It has forced us to utilize the technology and get better at what we should be better at, right?
Yeah.
Because you can talk to somebody who's between the ages of 15 and 25, and they can talk to you and they can text without missing a beat at the same time. With me, I have to have the letters as big as possible, and I have to be focused on what I'm texting, right, and who I'm texting to. So the versatility has to come into play for someone like me as a coach and how I'm coaching. At the same time, communication is just the key. And I think the spoken word is the best way to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So thank you for that. I can't wait for my staff to all watch this video. Also, I wanted to ask you, once COVID is over, right, meaning the vaccine is available to everybody, and things start opening up and life going back to normal, can't wait.
Right.
What is the first thing an agent should do, out the gate?
Knock on doors and hold as many open houses as they possibly can.
Very good. Yes, I concur.
Period. That's really the thing, because listen, we have multiple spokes of in the wheel.
Yeah.
That we can still do, and we can still pick up the phone. We can still advertise, market. We can still do social media. But two of the main spokes in our wheel, open houses and door knocking, we can't do. It's amazing to me though, and I just talked about this on my 7:30 huddle last week, is how many agents are like, oh, I'm so disappointed I can't knock doors. And I say, well, wait a minute. Back in January and February, I couldn't pay you to knock doors. And now everybody wants to knock doors and hold open houses. But back in the day, they didn't want to work weekends and did not want to knock on doors. So I tell them, get out there and get face-to-face with people as soon as you possibly can.
Right.
And now, at the same time, don't forget the technology that we have,
Right.
because there are a lot of top producers across the country who were using the virtual means anyway. They weren't going on listing appointments. They were either doing virtual meetings or they were meeting people in their office. So why would we want to go back to that? But if I can meet people virtually, especially on my initial buyer consultation, or if I can do a virtual listing presentation, if it is, I live in a certain part of Orange County where the homes are pretty cookie cutter. They are what they are. I can tell you what they are in my neighborhood or the track around the way. We pretty much know what they are. And so if we can do listing presentations virtually, right? Or our initial buyer consultation virtually, why would we want to get out of that?
Absolutely, because you said time is money. So you're cutting down the travel time, but you're not cutting down the face-to-face. You still have that element there.
Right.
So I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'm doing so much on Zoom, obviously, but I'm not going to, I know that when COVID is over, a lot of it I'm going to continue on, because guess what? When I have trainings, I can open that training up to everyone.
Yes.
So I could be doing a training for nationwide on a Zoom, but I can open it up to my Keller Williams agents, my Berkshire Hathaway agents, my independents. Because why? Because they can watch from the comfort of their own home office or at the office or even in their car. And so I tend to get a larger audience now, Kevin. So Zoom has been great in many ways.
Really great. So I came up when I was coached. My coach would always be over the telephone, and it would be over the telephone and not in person, whether I had an outside coach or a coach in the company. And it would be over the phone and not in person, because my coach would always say, because I want to keep the emotion out of it. And then I started coaching people, face to face. They'd come into the office and we'd do it. And then I would say, man, those coaches are right. You turn into a psychiatrist or psychologist when you coach in person. And so then I always was more comfortable and able to really tell the truth over the telephone, because when you do it in person, then people tend to get their feelings hurt a lot of times. So then now, since March, I have developed closer relationships from a coaching standpoint, sales manager standpoint, since I can touch people on Zoom so much faster. Yeah. And we can get in depth for our 30-minute sessions, and we can do our thing. And Zoom has given these virtual meetings have given me the opportunity to become closer with my agents, to be quite honest. I've been able to do a better coaching job with my agents and with our clients, with Ivy, handling our buyers and doing our listings and things like this. We've handled everything virtually.
Yeah.
We've gotten way better at it since July with working with our own clientele, because at first it was a little sporadic because I had so many office responsibilities and Ivy had to make sure everybody was okay with school and everything here. But this virtual is going to be great. So I don't want the agents to give that up. I want them to stick with that, but I want them to get out there and just hold open houses every Saturday and Sunday until the end of time now.
There you go.
And I'm not a real open house person, but that's one part of our industry that we've really missed out on in this year.
Well, and it will come back. They will be back. And it's going to be a crazy first half of the year, in my opinion. I'm thinking hopefully we all have the vaccine by then. Yep. But when the vaccine is available, I think it's just going to be, hopefully we see a lot of homes come on the market where people have been I'm sure there's still that fear factor out there of people not wanting to put their home on the market during COVID because they don't want the traffic. They don't want people in their home. You know, there's some people that are kind of over it. There's a lot of people over it, but there's still a lot of people that are fearful of COVID and taking this very, very serious. So, but okay, so we know we're gonna have it great when COVID is lifted, right? And we're gonna all be able to live our lives again. So, tell me though, right now, give our agents some tips, a gold nugget. Like, what are you having your agents do today to grow their business, and then to report back to you, and what's working best for them?
Well, I'm so glad that you said, what are we talking about them doing and to report back to me. And one of the things that we've said is, hey, in order to hit the ground running, in 2021, what I've done with my group is say, okay, we're just having a 14-month, and because we started really at the end of October talking about it, like everybody does about business planning and that sort of thing. We said, hey, let's look at 2021 as a 14-month year, and let's hit the ground running in November. Not because, look, they're not going to work next week, generally speaking, as an industry, because it's Thanksgiving week. So come Wednesday afternoon, people are going to shut down, right? Because we got Thanksgiving on Thursday and then Friday, and that sort of thing. Then we've got the last 8-9 days of 2020, right? And everybody's just going to be counting down the days saying, like when we hit 2021, it's just going to magically change, and all the stuff we've been dealing with in 2020 is just going to go away. But, my whole thing is, okay, so let's get focused right now. Let's act as if it's January 1st, and let's start working as if it's January 1st now in November. So the first thing, and what we've implemented here, is to get them to better understand their numbers. They have got to get your goals and get all of that stuff in writing, but I want you to understand your numbers, because normally we would say, hey, everything has to be in like a 90-day cycle. Now, with the way the market is, and with COVID, I'd say we've got to analyze things over a 6-month cycle. So by the time we get into the middle of the second quarter, if we understand our numbers and we're analyzing them on a daily basis, not on a weekly and a monthly basis, but on a daily basis, we'll be able to make adjustments where and when we need to make adjustments. We'll be able to do it much, much faster. So right now, it's there's your numbers that you're analyzing numbers if you're actually prospecting or lead generating. And so you've got to analyze those numbers now, and you've got to do it on a daily basis. So we're doing a much, much better job with tracking our numbers, so we know where we are as we're going to where we want to be.
Is it the old, how many no's before I get my yes?
Yeah, well, it is, for me, it used to be that, because then I would always talk about, okay, how many conversations do I have to have? Okay, so I got to have 200 no's before I get a yes, right? The thing is, what we can't control, and right now we're only if we're making phone calls, right? Because that's really it. We can't control how many people pick up the phone. What we can control is the time that we put in to do it.
Right.
And so my whole thing is time on task over time versus, I got to have 100 contacts. Now, you can track those contacts and track those leads and see how many leads you get until you get an appointment, and how many appointments you get before you actually get that contract signed.
Right.
But the only thing that you can control is you can control the amount of time that you spend in your lead generation. Period.
Makes sense.
That you can control. So mine is time on task over time. And so that's what we want to track. And yes, then track those other metrics, like you said, with how many no's. So your contacts, the amount of leads you get, your appointments, that sort of thing.
I don't know if you remember Bruce Mulhern, the late great Bruce Mulhern.
Yes.
Used to tell the agents that every time you make a call and they either hang up on you, tell you to go to where, whatever the case may be, they certainly didn't give you a yes, but you should say in your mind, thank you. You should thank them. And he said, based back then on what the average commission was for an agent, that every no paid you $60.
Yep.
Do you remember that, Kev?
Bruce used to say that. So I remember when we would stand in the meetings there in Bellflower, and the Thursday morning meetings, or the office meetings when Bruce was there, and he would talk about just that. And he'd say, we'd always think, and I would always just say, okay, $60 is too hard. I can figure out $50 because I can multiply in 50s way more than I can in 60s. And so I remember him saying that. And then it was it was one of the agents I remember we were talking, and he always used to say it. And we've always heard this, instead of hearing no, just hear next. And I really loved and have always lived by, and I tell my agents now, I like for the people that I'm calling or door knocking or that I meet, I want them to get to the no as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah.
If you're going to tell me no now.
Yeah.
If you're going to hang up on me, I'm okay with that. If you did not want my services, if you did not want my services and don't want them in the future, go on ahead and hang up on me now.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. So get to the no as fast as possible. The problem with the agents is they don't want to get to the no as fast as possible they're afraid of the no.
Mm-hmm. It's
You know,
rejection.
Right. No one likes rejection.
No one.
And so we have to get them conditioned. We have to get them conditioned to, okay, like you said, like Bruce would say, thank you. And thank you for telling me no right now. And thank you for the $50. Thank you for the $60.
Yeah. And you know what? If you look at it that way, it kind of makes it, you can make it fun. Right? You can allow yourself to have fun with it. I've been doing cold calling a lot more now than ever before. Yeah. And, you know that I lost my mom in June to COVID, right? So it kind of gave me a little, it made me a little edgy. You know, once you go through something like losing a parent or a loved one, you realize like there are more important things in life than the things that we worry about. So I'm not going to get myself all worked up because someone didn't want to talk to Christy Rye or, hung up on me. Right. So I'm okay with it. And I'll say, look, if I irritate the agent that I'm calling, I'll say, Kevin, I'm just prospecting. That's all. I'm just prospecting. I don't want to, I'm not meaning to bother you or upset you. So you have a wonderful day. And you know what, Kevin and I just move on and it's okay with me.
Right.
And I think if all of us find what's really important to us in life, or also something that remember that a tough time we really went through, and I tell myself, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. If I can get through losing my mom, bring it. That's my new bring it. Right?
See, that is listen, that's so profound because just think about it. We get rejected. Well, the first thing is you're married and you have kids. You get rejected at some point during the day by them just not, and especially if you being mom, a house full of men who just don't do things they're supposed to do. And you just pick up and you move on. Here's the thing, and you love them and it doesn't bother you as much if you meet somebody. And so I say, I've got a 6-year-old daughter who tells me no or wants to negotiate something with me all the time. I told you I have a 26-year-old son that didn't want to share his Rockstar energy drink with me. He didn't want to he didn't want to give his last one. I had to literally just take it and give him $5. And we're worried about some guy that we don't know.
Right.
Who we're never going to see again, tell us, no, thank you. I don't need what you have to offer.
Right.
And one of my coaches, he would tell me, listen, and I had it written up here, do not take it personal because you never know what's going on the other side of that door you just knocked on or on the other end of that phone.
So true.
So you cannot take this personal. And like I said, and you don't take it personal when your spouse or significant other tells you no. When you say you want to go to dinner here and they say, nope, don't want to go there. And you don't take it personal, then you just pick up and move on. And so it's the same thing. And we have to be okay with the no. We have to be okay. A great book, and my agents probably get sick of me hitting them over the head with it. Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. And in the book, Fanatical Prospecting, he says that your job as a salesperson is to interrupt people every day because you have to get leads. And the only way you're going to get leads is you call on people. Yeah. And so one thing in any of the scripts that I use, it's never going to be sorry to bother you because I'm not sorry to bother you.
Yeah.
That's my job. Like you said, I'm calling on people so I'm not sorry to bother you. If it does bother you, I apologize. Have a great day. Right?
Yes.
But I'm never going. My script is going to be, hey, sorry to bother you, because I'm not sorry to bother you. You know what? I'm trying to put my 6-year-old money away so my 6-year-old daughter can go to school.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing, and I'm never going to feel guilty about doing that.
I love that, Kevin, because you know so many people do start the conversation out with, "Sorry for calling you."
Right.
Sorry for the late text.
Right.
Sorry, and Bruce used to always say, just one more. I'll point out one more thing about Mr. Mulhern is he used to say, "Please forgive me, but may I ask?"
Right.
Please forgive me asking, but he's like, "What am I saying by please forgive me? I'm asking for permission."
Right.
So you start a conversation like that, like, "Please forgive me for saying so." Right. And then he just goes right in, for the kill. But he goes,
Bruce was a master, though. Remember, Bruce didn't have to say sorry. Bruce had that British accent, and he could just lay it on you anyway, right? And like I told you, I happen to work for some really, really good brokers throughout the year, and Bruce was one of them. Bruce and I didn't, and Bruce and I didn't always agree on everything.
Right.
However, he was an absolute master at what he did.
Yeah.
And as a salesperson and as a leader. And so, yes, he could get those nuggets in. And he always used to say, and I still use it on the agents today. He would say TNT, today, not tomorrow. And he'd say it in that British accent. I can't do it in the British accent, but he would always say, remember, today, not tomorrow. And I have that in so many of my notes. And I still talk to my agents about that all the time. Like I said, I am blessed that I've worked for and with some really, really good brokers and good brokerages. There's a couple of duds in there, but most of them have been pretty good. And I'm fortunate enough to have landed where I am now.
What holds people back? Because, like I do social media trainings with agents, and I find that there's usually like mindsets and like kind of common ground. So I was just curious, like what you thought are some common excuses or mindsets that you find people kind of trap themselves in, if you've noticed any, that kind of prevent people from going forward.
From actually picking up the phone and calling?
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because this morning, 7:30 huddle. And so at our 7:30 huddle this morning, we talked about limiting beliefs and why our agents don't do certain things. And with phone calling or with door knocking, it's really one thing. They don't know what to say or how to say it. And then one step further is, what if I call you, and what if you say yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had a call from an agent, and we talked. You must have been listening in on my huddle this morning, because we talked about that this morning. Agent called me on Saturday, and she said, hey, talk to our for sale by owner. Remember that for sale by owner that you told me to keep calling back every Friday and every Monday? Well, I called him, and he said, yes, come by. And now I'm freaking out. So and that was one of those agents who also talked to me on Sunday and used the, hey, sorry for calling you. No, you're not, in the middle of this football game. No, you're not sorry for calling me. But it's really, Alex, not knowing what to say and how to say it. And then we talked about them being afraid of the no, but they're afraid of the yes. And the reason they're afraid of the yes is because they're not as up to par with their listing or buyer presentation as they should be. If they were expert at their listing presentation, mm-hmm. they would be way more likely to pick up the phone and make that first call.
And so handling objections is critical. Being able to handle objections, knowing your scripts, right?
Yes, and it's not necessarily, because I coach my agents to do their best, not to handle objections over the telephone. Right. Your goal is to sit down in front of people, not to let them off the hook by giving them a bunch of answers. If I'm answering a bunch of questions, then I have no control. But if you're answering a bunch of questions, I'm still able to control the conversation. And that's how I build rapport. And that's how any good salesperson builds rapport, by asking questions of their prospect. Right. And so the key is to make sure, be aware that you're going to get objections. Don't panic, and don't try to handle every objection with some slick answer, but find out what the client wants, what the potential client wants, what their motivation is. Because if they're just asking questions just to ask you questions, if they're not thinking of buying or selling, or they don't know anybody who's buying or selling, then the purpose of my conversation is kind of, now it's just to mess around. Yeah. Because I'm ready to move on to the next call, to be quite honest.
Right.
So it's really, so to shorten that long old answer up, it's because they don't know what to say or how to say it, and two, they're afraid of the yes.
Yep. When you're on the phone with a prospective client, mm-hmm. and they start asking you questions right off the bat, what would you say to that potential homeowner or listing?
Well, depending on what the question is, it's asking, it's not answering a question with a question. It's not using those old tired sales techniques, but it is getting them to tell me a little bit more about that.
Right.
You asked me about this, you know what, tell me a little bit more about that, or what are your thoughts on that? Or, what's your thinking? What would lead you to even ask that question? I'm always going to ask them questions to find out why.
Yeah.
So we talk about, we have different scripts, and with different scripts, I talk about pre-qualifying buyers and sellers for motivation. And like I tell the agents, okay, if you're not going to ask the, 10, 12, 15 questions that I ask you to ask, just find out, the who, what, where, when, why.
So do you instruct your agents to try to limit the questions on the phone and just go for the appointment so you can sit face to face?
Well, what we do is we have the questions, but you have to know your jump in and set the appointment points in there.
There you go.
Okay. And so if we can get the appointment right off the bat, that's fine. But before we go on that appointment, we're going to ask all those who, what, where, when, why, because then I want to know, number one, do I even want to go on that appointment? And number two, can I help you? Because the only reason I wouldn't want to go on that appointment is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it sounds like, I'm not going to be able to help you in this situation. And it could, or, you're really asking those questions. One of my coaches would always say, you ask those questions because you want to find out if the people are crazy or not.
Right.
And you want to know, if you ask the who, what, where, when, why, then, even if you decide, okay, these people are crazy, but I'm going to go on the appointment anyway, then at least you go in, for lack of a better term, guns loaded. You know what you're about to run into. I'm going to have this crazy pricing objection or commission objection or something's going on, but you won't know that if you don't ask the appropriate questions.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Now, you've heard of Ford, right?
Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And you know who used to hit us over the head with that all the time was Bruce. Bruce used to hit us over the head with that all the time. And one of the guys that I work with, who is a local Southern California coach, and has a great team, and who's a knucklehead now, with all of his political views, but I won't go into that. But we added on to that. So we do family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And then we talk about real estate and referrals. So we would call it Ford RR. And so, yeah.
I like that.
Ford is great. So we would add, so if I'm meeting with you for lunch, Christy, and I'm coming from contribution and I want to know how's a family, occupation, recreation, dreams, then I'm going to talk about, because then that conversation will eventually, if you are a kind and a giving person and somebody that I want to work with, you're going to ask me about how I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you about what I do. And that's the only time I'm going to talk about real estate and or referrals.
So this Ford, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, it's a starting point to pull information out of a person. And while you're asking them certain questions, like, so tell me about your family. Do you have children? Right. Oh, you have a 13-year-old. So do I. Boy or girl, right? And so now you're finding those things that you have in common. So this is on purpose to build rapport, so that you become, almost like you're no longer strangers.
Right.
You have common ground. So the find out about their family. What do they do for a living? If they were to vacation, where would they go? What do they love to do for recreation? And then lastly, what are their dreams? What do they hope to accomplish in their future? Maybe help their 25-year-old son buy a home, or pay for their daughter's dream wedding, or buy a second home for themselves. Whatever the case may be, you're learning about them, and you're getting to know them on a more personal level. And that's all about trying to make the relationship, put the relationship first, build a relationship, and then in turn help them down the road, right? And then
absolutely.
You said you guys added the 2 R's. Want to tell me about that again?
Real estate. So then you would talk about real estate. So then when if the conversation, and when the conversation turns to you at all, then you can let them know, hey, like we said, market is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
You know what? All we need are more sellers, because the inventory is so low.
Right.
Then you could talk to, so remember, if you know anybody who may be thinking about making a move, I'm your guy, right? And that's where I'm going to go to that type of conversation. And if you're once you turn it there, you don't want to immediately, like if you're going to a networking event, you go to a network and let tip, or, I'm dating myself. They probably don't even have let tip anymore. I don't know any of those networking groups, but you go to networking groups, you're not going there and just handing somebody your business card and telling them what you do. You're collecting their business card and finding out what they do.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And hey, it sounds like maybe I can help you because I'm in the real estate field and I meet a lot of people who may need an electrician. Would you mind if I gave them your card or gave them your number? And that's how it goes to the real estate and referrals. And for guys and gals who are salespeople, remember when you're talking to the general public, and if you really come from contribution and you're asking these questions and you're actually listening to them, right? Yeah. They know that you're sincere and coming from a good place. They're not going to know, oh, he's trying to use the Ford technique on me. There has to be a certain amount of authenticity and sincerity when you are having these conversations with people.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
That's really where it goes. And, if you're talking, because if you're having that conversation with me, Christy, that I'm going to talk about my daughter, right? You see my cup? Can you see that? I
like bourbon and my smoker.
Okay. And maybe 3 people. Okay. And
who had that made for you?
Oh, one of my agents. One of my agents. And it's so funny because, like I said, she saw it and then she sends me the thing, I'm getting this for you for your birthday. And she got me a cup and got me a t-shirt that says the same thing. And then one of my clients, in fact, you've spoken with this particular client one day. He sends it to me a text, because people know that's, those are my vices. That's what I do. Yep. But so they're going to get that from me when they talk to me. Yeah. Right. And so we talk about social media. People have reached out to Ivy and I on social media about purchasing or selling their home because they see more on social media about Reese, and I could do a much better job marketing our real estate business on social media. I should do way better, but I get more satisfaction from posting and looking at pictures of my daughter and everybody else's dog and cat and daughter and son than posting real estate. But they know me because of that, and they feel like they have known Reese since the day she was born. So that's kind of the connection that I make with people through social media. I could do a much better job on social media with marketing, but that just hasn't been my thing.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I would say that is better in a lot of ways than people that just do marketing. Because that's kind of a trap that a lot of people that I talk to fall into, is they think that social media is just marketing. It's just, put my business out there. Right. But the most important thing that I'm constantly talking to people on is that, like, you want to share your family, you want to give people reasons to come back to your page because they like you, they want to know more about your family, right? Because that's what people get invested to, and that's what people want to do business with. They want to do business with people, with families that they love, and that's what people get invested in. So I think that's amazing. I wouldn't sell yourself short, because that's exactly what people should be doing.
I think that's a good point, because then I'm just a normal guy, rather than hitting people over the head. Hey, I'm number one in this particular track, or I'm the best here, or I sold 15 houses this month. Okay, great, Mr. You're number one in the neighborhood. Then charging me 4.5% is not going to hurt you, because you're sitting out in front with that Mercedes 560, that S-Class. You know what I'm saying? And so, and like you said, Alec, that's a good point, because if you're friends with 15, with 100 people on Facebook or Instagram, and 85 of them are real estate agents, who all they're doing is they go to a seminar of one of the coaches, and the coach says, okay, this is what I want everybody to do. I want you to go to your social media right now and ask everybody how old they were when they first bought their first house. And then every agent in that thing goes on to Facebook and they post that. And I know if any of you agents are watching, you've done that before. Why not be more authentic?
Yes.
Why not be you? I'll mention another, because I told you I work for I've worked for really, really good brokers. Neil Schwartz, who happens to have a company, local company. And I remember he pulled me aside one day and he said, Kevin, I want you to be more authentic. I'll never forget that, because I'm like, man, you're never going to meet anybody more authentic than me.
For sure.
Right? What are you talking about? And then I thought about it. And so since then, I've always thought, okay, just be you. Be you. But more importantly, walk the walk and don't just talk the talk.
Right.
And I think that at that time, when I think back, that's what he meant. And so even on social media, I tell people, be authentic, be who you are.
Yeah.
You know, stay away from the crazy political posts and things like that. But if you're going to do that, be willing to suffer the consequences.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Just be who you are. That's what I say.
Yeah.
And you know me, Christy, I am who I am, to a fault at times. But that is also how I coach. And I coach agents to just, you know what, go out there when you go to work, wear your big boy and your big girl pants to work every day. Mm-hmm. And as a coach, I'm here to kick you in the backside when you need to be kicked in the backside, but catch you when you need to be caught when you're falling down.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like, and I hate to use this analogy because I don't want agents to think I'm talking down to them, but it's like being a parent. I'm not here to be your friend.
Yeah.
You know, and raising boys to be men, you want to be their friend and friendly with them, but you got to be mom.
Right.
you know, and so for me, I have to be the coach. I have to be the one that kicks you in the backside, because we are not going to hold ourselves accountable. We're just not good at that all the time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Christy, you're never going to fire yourself. I tell the agents, you're never going to fire yourself. And in this industry, unfortunately, a lot of real estate agents don't get fired. Yeah. Right. And so they need a coach that is going to tell them the truth. And I'm a truth teller almost to a fault.
Well, it's tough love, isn't it?
Yeah. And
right?
I think
it has to be.
It has to be. And if they know that I care, I honestly care, yeah. It's not bad for them. They completely understand. And I would say that most of my agents and most of the agents that I work with, they understand that it's because I want them to be the best versions of themselves each and every day.
Well, and I think too, a coach's job is to, one of your primary functions, I think, is to help us get out of our comfort zone, step outside of our comfort zone, because you don't grow where you're comfortable. You have to step into that uncomfortable realm in order to grow.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
There you go. Exactly.
It's just like going to the gym. You go to the gym. If you don't feel like if you don't feel like you worked out, then you probably didn't, and it probably didn't do much.
Right.
You know, when I go on my morning walks with Ivy, I'm almost at a jog with her, trying to keep up with her, right? And just so she says, well, if you want to just go for a country stroll, then it's not going to do you any good. You know, and so we have to, you're 100% correct. I totally agree. We have to be much, much more comfortable being in that uncomfortable zone. Right. You know, because
Absolutely.
that is really the only way that we grow.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard to step outside of your comfort zone. And some people have major anxiety over that. And I've seen agents cold calling when I've been in a cold calling group session with agents. I actually saw a woman start crying, and she just dropped the phone and grabbed her purse and ran out. She couldn't do it. She just couldn't do it. And I remember that scared the crap out of me. I was a brand new title rep, and I'm sitting there going, what are these people doing? You
know what, Christy, even as making that first phone call of the day is still always the most difficult. If there's anybody who says, oh, I love cold calling, it's, you know, they've psyched themselves out into doing it. Nobody loves it. I mean, now what we do love is we love the success when we have the success, but nobody loves just getting on the phone, putting on your headset and sitting there, standing there for 3 hours and having people call you names.
Yeah.
But but that's just that is just that $50, that $50, because we are very, very well paid for what we do. But there's a reason that we're well paid for what we do. Everybody can't do it. For sale by owners can't do it. People can't, they can look online and find property, but they can't complete that purchase without coming through us.
Yep.
You know, make no mistake about that. We're still needed, but going back to the phone calling, it is so difficult. You know, I've never had a problem speaking in front of crowds. I've never had a problem getting out and talking to people, but still to this day, making that first phone call, it's your stomach still kind of bothers you until you get that first pickup.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And you know what, Christy, you have to know why you're doing it. Why am I going through the pain of this every single day? Why am I picking up the phone at 9 o'clock and calling between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock just to have people call me names and tell me what a loser I am for calling them? Why am I doing this?
Your why.
If you know your why,
yeah,
the how will follow, but you got to know your why. You know, do things. We have, what do you call it? Prospecting bingo. I'm sure you've probably had that. And like I said, or you would have a point system and I'd say, hey, if you get called this name or that name, it's worth that many points. If you just get hung up on, that's 1 point. But if you get called, you know, you know, a bunch of words, that's 10 points, you know, and just make it a game. And we have the bingo cards and you can get those bingo cards anywhere. But like you said, you have to make it a game and you have to know why you're doing it, period. I'm doing it because I want that big screen TV, you know, whatever the materialistic, the crazy, selfish thing is. If it's, I want that, you know, I want to be able to go to San Francisco. I want to go wine taste and I want to do this. You've got to psych yourself out in order to do that every day. And it's Christy, you said it is very difficult to do. Yeah. But like they say, if it were easy, we would not get compensated the way we get compensated.
No, and you were talking about, you said it a couple of minutes ago about how doing it, making that first call, that's the hardest. But then when you get one, when you set an appointment or when you get the listing, it's those triumphs that make it worth a while. And those are the feelings you have to remember. How did that make you feel? So don't stop because someone went off on you, threatened to sue you, told you they were on the DNC list, and now have you scared to death that you're going to lose your license. How did that listing that you got from calling, but never would have happened had you not picked up the phone? How did that make you feel?
I think about that all of the time. I think about that. You know, we just closed the deal on Friday, and you know, we went and saw the client, gave the keys, and you know, Ivy handles our buyers generally, and you know, I always, when somebody like me, I'm like, oh gosh, buyers, they just drive me crazy because I just don't like driving all over the country. You know, Ivy likes doing that. She likes that sort of thing. However, the satisfaction is when I can give them their keys. Yeah, for sure. You know, that end result. And I remember talking to him and I said, you know, I know that you could have used any number of agents. When I talked to him, he says, well, you know why I used you guys, right? And I said, why? And he said, because you called me back. That's what he said. He said, you were the only one that called me back. Wow. And so, you know, we have to remember why we do this. We cannot forget our hustle. I remember I got in this business back in the day because, you know, we want that certain amount of independence. We want to make money. Remember, we are a for-profit business. I'm a for-profit guy. All those things I wanted to do. And yes, of course, I wanted to help people. But now it's gotten to, I always remind our agents, remember, you're going to get paid in direct proportion to the services that you provide people. And the more people you help, the more money you get. And the more money you get, it's because you helped a lot of people. So wake up in the morning every day and say, okay, who can I help today? Or where's this next person coming from that I'm going to help? Here's the first thing is we have to realize that authenticity is it. This is just conversation and little things like that. And, you know, the magic of editing and all that stuff is all good. But like I tell people, you know, in our Zoom calls and everything now, when we mess up, when we're dealing with our clients aren't going to know, right? And you have no idea. I did put on I didn't wear a t-shirt, Christy. I put on a collared shirt. It's not a dress shirt, but I put on a collared shirt just for you. But like I tell everybody, I said, you never know if I'm sitting here in shorts and flip flops or anything, which out of all of our 180 days being in this lockdown, believe me, I put on long pants maybe 3 times.
I was going to say, I know you're wearing shorts and flip flops. I already know.
Maybe 3 times. Maybe 3 times. I'm okay. Christy, I am 100%. I was out this weekend for a little bit of time. And, I always remind our agents and especially you can see, you talked about earlier with the COVID numbers, I always remind our agents, don't let your guard down.
Yeah.
We can't let our guard down and realize that we have had record months in the last 3 or 4 months in our company.
Yeah.
And this is during the worst possible social times, political times in 50 years.
Right.
And in the middle of a plague.
Right.
And we are still able to have record numbers. So don't just continue to do what you're doing and just do more of it.
Right. So Kevin, I want to share a couple of things with you because you're the professional here and this is your area of expertise. Okay. I'm just a wee little title rep, but I pick up a lot of information along the way in my journey.
You know that you are the go-to and you are being so modest.
Well, yes, I am. But I coach agents unknowingly, right? I get a lot of new agents that are sent to me by their managers or brokers. I have agents that get stuck in a rut. They come to me and I just share with them things that I pick up along the way. I share with them things that are working for other agents that they might want to try. And, lately I've been thinking about the shortage of inventory because that's a huge problem for everyone in our industry. And it's a huge problem for buyers. And so what doesn't make sense to me is that we don't have more sellers looking at how right now is probably, in my entire career, the best time to sell.
Right.
Like you said earlier, it is the most incredible time to sell. If you've been thinking about getting rid of that income property that you have because you live out of state and it's just, you could cash out, maybe do a 1031 exchange, maybe exchange into a real estate investment trust, those REITs, where it's just positive cash flow. So I talk to my agents about going after these niche markets, target markets. So absentee owners is a no-brainer I think, for agents to target those individuals who could really cash out on these properties and help the real estate industry by so we would get more inventory.
Right.
And targeting people that were expired, that were expired, go back 6 months. Right. And make a phone call to an expired saying, "Hey, this is Christy. I'm calling you. I'm a real estate agent and I noticed that, Kevin, you were an expired back in April. So, can I tell you why that worked in your favor?" Right. And the way it worked in your favor is that prices have gone up exponentially. Right. So it actually behooved you to take your property off the market back then. So my question to you, Kevin, today is, do you still have a need to sell? Right. So I've been sharing with my agents that little script that I think is a no-brainer, and calling the expireds and getting them to talk to you. Call old expireds, right? And then of course the for sale by owners are, like you said, they most of the time. What's the percentage? 90%.
It's high, 90 something.
Okay,
yeah, they're going to use agents.
There you go. So are you telling your agents specific target markets to go after, Kev? Like when you're coaching them, do you give them advice? Who do you tell them to reach out to? Well,
for the agents that I work with, I tell them, especially now, call everybody. And if you're not calling expireds and for sale by owners, you're crazy, because they've got their hand up saying that they want to sell, or at some point in time they've wanted to sell, whether it's now or whether it's 6 months from now or a year ago. My whole thing is, and I always tell them, remember, when you're calling old expireds, you've got to get down to the nitty gritty as to why, because if your home expired, then there's something wrong, not with anybody other than you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Now you have to figure out a way to convey that in the right way, but you find out, hey, if you did sell the house, you had to have some sort of plan. Where were you going? Or were you planning to reinvest And where were you going to reinvest? That goes back to calling absentee owners. Because if I've got somebody who lives in Texas and they own property here, then you know what, and they've got equity, let's turn that single family into a duplex or triplex or apartment building. And the great thing about our company is we've also got for buying apartment buildings, commercial properties, we've also got a property management company. We can handle the management for you.
There you go.
Or hey, get out of California and buy and shoot. You can, if you've owned property here and you've got a whole bunch of money, buy it, take that equity, buy something else in Texas or wherever else you are. But for me, it's calling everybody right now. It is being purposeful and having that niche. We do have some people who were calling. So I just had a coaching session with a couple of agents who were calling absentee owners, but they were calling absentee owners in a newer community. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You got to be purposeful. Call absentee owners in a mature community. But I want you calling in an area where the homes were built in the 50s and 60s and not in the 90s or from 2005. They were calling in the new area of Corona. Well, that's not who you should be calling. Why don't you call in the old section of Corona? You know, if that's the area that you're in.
Yeah.
And so my whole thing is, if you are going to call in any type of a niche, number one, make sure, let's say, for instance, I want absentee owners or I want people with equity. I always tell them, make sure you call your title rep and find out, okay, get the demographic, tell them what you want to do. It's always call Title Queen, call Christy, tell her what you want to do, and then shut up. And then you can figure out, because she can help you with the demographics. And then when you are calling, you've got to be purposeful. And it can't be, I'm going to call here for a week.
Right. Oh, exactly.
You know, there's got to be a method to their madness. And so to answer your question, yes, if they are going to have that niche, but you've got to be purposeful when you have that niche.
Absolutely.
You've got to be, and you've got to have stamina. See, the problem is the general public has more stamina than we do as agents. We get worn out quickly. We're okay, all right, it didn't work. I tried it for 3 days and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And the reason is because the for sale by owner or the expired listing or calling around just listed, just sold, they have a better script than the agents do. And so if the guy or gal that I'm calling has a better script than I do, then I'm never going to get through to them.
You're right.
At all. And we spend a lot of time trying to make people sell or buy when they're not going to sell or buy.
Exactly.
If I call an expired listing or a for sale by owner and I say, hey, if you do get the home sold, after we're having a conversation, you know, hey, so do you plan on buying? Where do you plan on moving to? I want to know where you're going. And when you buy, do you plan on owning a home, or are you going to rent? Are you going to get a bigger home, or are you going to get a smaller home? I'm going to ask those types of questions of them.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have anywhere to go, Christy, they're not selling. There's a reason why this property in this crazy market where we have no inventory has expired. Because they're not really looking to sell most of the time. Yes, can it be marketing and all those things, but it's usually condition and price.
Yep.
That's usually what it is. And the two things that we can control, we can't control location. You can't pick the house up and move it, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be the best staged home in the whole wide world.
Right.
But you do have to depersonalize, declutter, and you do have to more, you don't even have to do that. You can have a piece of junk. Well, if you price it right, it's going to sell. Absolutely. And if you don't price it right, it's not.
That's why I think, number one, you hit it on the nail when you said you got to find out their why. And I think that's for anyone that you're talking to on the phone, but not the ones that don't want to sell, you know, because you mentioned that too. And I'll never forget, I was at a Mike Ferry event and I was sitting closer to the front of the room. And a lot of agents were saying, Mike was talking about cold calling, talking about the scripts, and people kept raising their hands saying, but Mike, when I can't even get through the script because they hang up on me, they don't let me ask all the questions. Right. And then he just kept getting the same kind of like thing thrown at him by agents in the room about how these people hang up on them. These people won't talk to them. And he goes, guys, stop. He stood up and he yelled at us. He goes, stop. first of all, it is not your job to convince people to sell. I've never told you to do that, to try to talk someone into selling. It is your job to find people that have a need to sell.
Yep.
And Kevin, it was like, and a hush came over the room. The next thing, I mean, you just heard all these people exhale.
Right.
And I was sitting there going, wow, like what just happened? They were so stressed out and thinking they were failing because they couldn't keep people on the phone, and everyone hung up and everybody would get mad. He goes, look, you're talking to the wrong people. Keep going until you find the ones that have a need to sell.
Yeah. It is a sheer numbers game. And, you know, I'm a old school Mike Ferry guy. I got a Mike Ferry sign sitting up back there. That's where I got my whole prospecting sign. And a lot of agents always do talk about their inability to get through all the questions. And Mike's questions are they've been the same questions forever.
Yeah.
When do you plan on moving? How long have you lived this address? Where'd you move here from? How'd you happen to pick this area? If you were to move, where would you go next, and when would that be? You know, all of those are the same thing. And part of the reason agents can't get through their questions is because, just like I've used that script. I used that script years ago 10,000 times. So it's still I can't even forget it if I want to forget it.
Yep.
And they can't get through their script because they can't get through their initial intro, because they're so busy calling people and saying, hey, how are you doing today? And blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, who are you? What do you want? Because when I pick up the phone, that's all I want to know. Who are you? What do you want? Yep. Don't ask me how I'm doing today. Don't tell me sorry, anything. Yeah. Who are you? What do you want? That's part of the reason. Yeah. The other part is also, like you said, person doesn't want what you've got.
Right.
If a guy comes to my door now and he's an encyclopedia salesman, I don't want encyclopedias. So if I shut the door, I don't need him or her.
Right.
I got solar guys coming through the neighborhood all the time. I don't want it.
Yeah.
And so unless I feel like engaging with a salesperson just because I want to hear their script. And so, like you said, with agents, they have to understand you are not such a great salesperson that a guy or gal that's sitting there eating Fritos, and then you're going to call them, and then you're just going to say, you know what? I haven't thought about selling my house, but now that I got you on the phone, I want to sell.
Exactly.
That's not, you can make 25,000 calls, and that's not going to happen. And if it does, it's luck. It's just the luck of the draw. You got it's a freak of nature thing. Yeah. So you cannot, I do get that. It's so strange you said that, because I get so many people, okay, Kevin, how do I convince my neighbor? How do I convince him? And it's like, but if he sells, where's he going? Well, he doesn't really know where he wants to go. Well, then he's not selling.
Yeah.
You're not going to sell until you and your husband, or you and your wife, or you and your significant other, or you yourself decide, I'm selling because of this. So coach tells me, he says, hey, you meet somebody and they tell you, or you sit down and you ask them, or you're just in conversation, they say that they're moving. The first thing salespeople want to do is what? They want to say when.
Yeah.
Because they've got that commission breath. When you're going to get that commission? And he beat me over the head with, no, but friends and professional salespeople say, where are you going?
Exactly.
Number one, because I care, you're my friend. I don't want you to move from there. And then, where are you going? And then two, what's taking you there? You've got to find out the motivation. And so we go all the way back to what Alec asked about earlier. What is it that stops people from engaging in these conversations? What is it that stops people from picking up the phone? It's plain and simple. They don't know what to say and how to say it. Yep. And when you say yes, they don't know what their next move is.
And you know what, Kevin? You also touched on something a couple of minutes ago when you read out. You actually said the Mike Ferry script verbatim, and I know the scripts, so I was like saying them in my head with you.
Yep. And
you're right. It's like once you learn them, you can't unlearn them.
Right.
Burned in. I mean, they're there.
You can't unsee it.
You can't. And so think about if our agents would memorize scripts. But more importantly, and as important, I should say. Maybe it is more important.
Right.
Learn the answers to the top 10 objections.
Right.
They would be unstoppable, whether it's in person or on the phone.
So one of the things, one of the, projects that I have the agents work on, okay, just tell me what are the top 3 to 5. Ben and I would ask this question of the agents. I'd say, with Ben, well, maybe there's 7 to 10 objections. Ben he's like, I get 4 or 5 of the same objections over and over again. What they try to do is and I'm going to show you something here because I have this is old. Hold on as I reach down here. This is great theater. These 40, so I have this is old. These are top 40 objections, right?
Yes.
And they try to learn all 40. And you're not going to get them. You're not going to get 40 different objections, right? You're going to get the same 5 to 10, and 10's even a lot. You're going to get the same objections.
Yeah.
So why not just become expert at those objections? So what I will tell you is, so the great thing about our company, and we talked about the training and the coaching that we do, is we do objection handling and script practice every single morning. So I will have the huddle, the agent huddle, and that's more of a motivation, accountability huddle, a kind of kick in the butt, and your morning coffee that we have done every day, every weekday since, like I said, 3rd week of March. And then they take a little bit of a break, and then at 8:30 they do their script and role play practice, and then they go. And so, but internalizing those basic scripts is where it comes. And then remember, scripts are nothing but guides. They're guidelines. The thing is, agents try to change and modify things when they haven't. Number one, they don't understand the script, and they say, "Oh, it's not me." And I rattle off those questions. There's no script. I mean, we all have a script, Christy. Mm-hmm. It's just that most agents' scripts are bad. And that's because they really don't have a set script that they've worked on. They try to use their own script. They get in the business. They've been in the business for 15 minutes, and their script all of a sudden is better than Coach Kevin's script. Or Christy, who's been in her position and worked with agents for 30 plus years, their script is better. And so what I coach and relate to the agents that I work with is, let's internalize this script, and then realize that if you know the who, what, where, when, why, how, you'll be able to ask all those questions. There's certain scripts that you have to ask them in a certain order, but a lot of them you don't have to ask them in order, but you still want to get all of those questions answered. And one thing that I've just learned, and this has just been the last 6-7 years, and that I work with the agents, is we have to stop asking questions and letting people not answer them.
Right.
So if I ask you a question, I'm asking you a question because I want an answer, and I'm just going to ask it again and again and again and again and again. Hey, when I come out on Thursday, what was your expectation of price, Mr. Seller? Oh, well, that's what I hired you for, or that's what I'm going to hire you for. That's, you're the expert. Yeah, you're right about that, because I study prices every day, but you had to have a number, right?
Yeah. There you go.
So what's your expectation of price? And I'm going to continue to ask those questions, and that's how. And Christy, that's really how you establish rapport, right? Is you ask questions about people and get them to talk about themselves. Yep. That's my whole goal.
You get them to tell you a pricing because you want to know where they're at in order for you to know. Yeah.
I want to know, are you crazy or not? I want to know if you live in what I know to be a $750,000 to $800,000 neighborhood. If you say you want $1.2 million, just out of curiosity, how on earth did you? I'm not going to say it like that, but that's what I'm saying in my head. Hey, out of curiosity, how'd you come up with that price? I want to know. And I'm going to ask as many questions as I have. So I use, we've all, from my years of being in the business and in coaching, I've taken pre-qualification for motivation scripts and added and deleted and done some things. And I tell the agents, you got to ask all these questions. And it may start off as 12 to 15 questions, but as you go deeper and wider with your questioning, as you and I develop that conversation, that 12 to 15 questions may turn into 25 to 30 questions, but it is going to be a natural progression.
Right.
When you tell me something, I'm going to say, you know what, tell me a little bit more about that. I'm going to find those things out. So, we're all scripted one way or the other. It's just you're either using a good script or you're using a bad script. Plain and simple. It really is that simple for me. And we talk about scripting, Christy, listing presentation. This is 30-something pages written out. Of what I use. Yeah. So 30-something page. And here's the thing. So I tell the story. Don't mean to bore anybody, but the first, I think it was one of the retreats in the 90s. And that was when Tom Ferry was working with his dad, right? And we did that was when in the 90s where he said, you got to write your scripts out. So I would write, you'd go to one of those production things and then you'd have to write down the expired script or whatever it is. And so he said, we're going to have a contest, so write it out. So I made sure I wrote mine on a yellow pad. Oh, check this out, Christy. You see that?
Oh my God.
See that? So this goes to tell you how old this is too.
It's funny.
And so anyway, I just thought about that. So anyway, I wrote it out and I wrote mine out on a yellow pad, right? And so there was like 300 or 400 people in the room. Turned it in. It was like 2 or 3 pages. Turned it in, and I saw this big old stack that he had in his hand. And I saw the yellow one. I said, nobody else, there's mine right there. And he said, okay, I'm going to throw these up in the air, and whichever one I grab. And he throws it up in the air, and whose does he grab? Boom, the yellow one stands out. He grabs my script. And so that was how I think I went to my first Superstar retreat way back then, because I got it for free. And that was back when it used to cost like $800 or something. And it was in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
And so writing out my scripts and things like that I've done that for a long time. And I'm by no stretch of the imagination the best at scripts and dialogues. However, I'm pretty comfortable with them. And like you said, it's because we've used that script over and over and over again. And it has been internalized. Period. And then we're spewing it out, and we don't even really realize that that's what we're using. But it really is that.
Let's recap.
Yes. Okay.
First of all, that you're a badass.
I don't know about all that, and
you are
being all over the place because I told you, and Alex said, well, if you guys can talk for maybe, a few more minutes, and I said, shoot, me and your mom could talk forever. You guys cut us off.
Didn't I tell you that before we got on?
Yeah.
I told Alec and I told Keegan, I told everybody, I said, I love talking to Kevin. Kevin and I get on the phone and, 20 minutes will go by and I feel like it was only 5. And we're, he'll go, hey sis, I got to let you go. I got to get to work.
And I know you're going from office to office or you're calling. It's like, so.
But I love your energy, Kevin. And I hope that the people out there are picking up on the things that I love most about you, your energy, your commitment to your agents, and your tough love, because your tough love is one of your biggest attributes, is that you're not afraid to tell people what they need to hear.
Right.
You're not that coach that's going to just tell me what I want to hear. You're going to be that coach that's going to tell me what I need to hear.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to also get out to our agents today. And what do they need to hear? They need to be calling everyone. What Kevin said. You've got to have stamina, right?
Yes.
You can't hold open house. You can't door knock. So it leaves you no choice but to reach out to your database, reach out to your farm, your sphere. I guess it's the same thing, your past clients, and go and cold call.
Yes. And I don't want to leave out that they really should start killing it on social media. And how we do it on social media, everybody does it a little different, but they've got to utilize that technology that we have there, whether, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever else is new that I don't know, TikTok, I don't care what it is.
Alec just giggled right now when you said TikTok.
And that's only because Ivy sits there laughing at TikTok for hours on end. And Reese, Reese just started posting because she likes to dance now, and it's different. I know, Christy, but she's 6 and she wears me down and she's like, Daddy, please. And so, but
I remember we talked about this, and you were saying no to TikTok.
I know.
You gave in.
But she brings everything to us.
Aww.
She brings it to us. And, we're parents of the year. We just, okay, go ahead. You can post it and we see how it goes. But
oh my gosh, yes. I'm sure she's got it. Do you have followers on TikTok, Alec? Is that how that works?
So, yeah, I restricted. So listen, I restricted her followers. I didn't want anybody to be able to find her little friend and auntie and stuff like that. But it's funny. She's 6 years old and she says, I only have 2 likes. Oh. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just don't get it. And I said, honey, you're not going to get more than that because I'm not going to let more people follow you. But it's just funny at that age how they start thinking about those sort of things. So I got to rear back a little bit. But yes, the bottom line is, Christy, and sorry for interrupting you, is you've got to expose yourself to as many people as you possibly can about real estate.
Right.
Period.
Okay. And about who you are, like what you said. Yes. Alec has always told me that with my social media posts, like I will do something that's about title, and how I do it makes all the difference in the world. If I do a video and talk about title or a title tip or something that just happened on a file, and I want to make sure my agents don't have the same, bad luck, so don't do this. Do this, and that those go. I get way more interaction versus than if I just post something that's in a text like or an image of a title tip of the week. And what really excels is the ones where it's about me and my honey bunny and I out to dinner on date night. My kids and I out in the backyard barbecuing with my husband or. Yes. Those things
you've gotten over yourself. What happens is we don't want to post video. We don't want to post pictures of ourselves. And, you have to just be you.
Right.
You have to be you. Like me, I won't post anything with me in it, or I haven't posted as many videos because I say, I don't have a face for video. I got the face for radio, or for a podcast, something like that. I'm good with it. But then it's like, you just got to get over yourself.
You absolutely do, Kevin, and you have a perfect face for video. And but hey, I love seeing your barbecue. Yeah. Okay, I'm telling you, you post like something you've cooked or smoked over the weekend, and it's like, wow, you could have a restaurant.
But you know what? Those are things. Those are things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate, obviously, about real estate, but even for us, I get more enjoyment. You and I talk about things and I'm like, hey, Christy, I got this, I've got this deal. What do you think, this, that, and the other? But then our conversation goes somewhere else. And that's where it's real life.
Yeah.
And so that's what I enjoy more than anything else. I could talk about, I can talk about real estate for about 15 minutes. And then after that, it's like, let's talk about, like I said, beer, bourbon, and barbecue, that sort of thing. So yes, but to go back, I want the agents, we got to talk to as many people as we can about real estate and use that Ford approach.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, this has been amazing, and I cannot thank you enough for being our second guest for our second podcast. How am I saying that? Our guest on our second podcast ever. And I was so excited that I was going to get an opportunity to interview you. And I love you to death. You are such a dear friend. You're such a dear friend, and I love your family. And I hope all of our realtors out there, and even if you're not in real estate, you're in some sort of sales, you're hearing Kevin's message. And you guys go out there and make it a great week. Kevin, thank you again so much.
Yes. Hey, tell everybody, look me up on social media, Kevin Robinson on Facebook, Ivy Kev on Instagram.
All right, Kev. Well, my friend, you have a great week. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you, too, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Ciao.
Love you.